Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Tej Dose of Vibe, a free flowing podcast. Before we get into today's incredible podcast, I just wanted to state two quick things. One, there was some tech issues on my end. I was testing out a new camera. So unfortunately, the video for my end did not get saved for this podcast, but we have Trevor's video alongside my audio. So apologies. Number two, this was an incredible full circle moment for me because 10 years ago, I stumbled across this book, Three Simple Steps by Trevor Blake, and it completely transformed my life alongside Trevor's course, The Transformation Experience. So, to get the opportunity to run this conversation with Trevor some years later was a full circle moment, and I couldn't be more stoked to share this with you. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. This was an absolute blast. And if you're curious to check out Trevor's course, The Transformation Experience, I highly recommend it. It's the greatest course that I've ever taken. And every single time I go through it, it completely transforms my life and turns it into an epic adventure. So if you're curious to find out what it's all about for yourself, you can go into the bio. There's a special code, TEDGDOSA, and it'll get you the course for $500 off. And that's it for me. Enjoy this podcast. It was a lot of fun to record, and I can't wait to hear what you have to say about it. That's it for me. Cheers and enjoy. Trevor G. Blake, this is one of the greatest moments of my life because this is one of those full circle moments. And I'll get into why in just a minute. But before we do, I was wondering if we could start with the energy cleanse. I know you may have done one before this, but I think it would be awesome if you could walk our listeners through the energy cleanse and we could start from there.
Yeah, glad to. I did just do it, but it's such a habit for me now. I do it before any type of meeting, but from board meeting to meeting family members. So basically, it's an ancient technique which I've kind of modernized a little bit, and the idea is to create some heat friction. But of course, everything in the universe is made of energy. So what we're doing here is we're actually agitating all kinds of energies, most of which we don't understand yet. And then what we're going to do is we're going to kind of wash ourselves with it. And if it sounds a little weird, think about it like this: what you're doing right now, when we're watching our favorite sports team and, they miss an obvious goal or something like that, the first thing we do is like touch our face, or if we're shocked, the first thing we do is like, oh my God, let's go. It's actually our DNA is built in us to sort of do a sort of energy cleanse, get rid of some of that stagnant energy. And then you repeat the same thing and you do it over the crown of your head and then over your shoulders. And the crown of your head, we'll do this if we're concentrating and suddenly find we get stuck on something. We all do this, right? So you wash your head. And then the third thing you do is you're allowed to give yourself a hug. So if you're feeling down, someone's going to put their arms around your shoulder. They're not going to touch your face or anything like that. So you have permission to give yourself a bit of an energy cleanse hug. And you shake it out. And you should do that every time you are in a new situation. So when I go into a boardroom, for instance, I'll make sure I'll go to the bathroom and I'll do this. No one has to see it, right? So I'll do this before I get in there. And it just lifts you up. It gives you fresh energy. And things just generally go better when you do this.
Awesome. So after this energy cleanse, it sets the perfect tone for why this is such a full circle moment for me because Trevor, I get emotional even just thinking about this because your book, Three Simple Steps, and the transformation experience in particular has completely, and I mean completely, transformed every single area of my life in such a magical and profound way that even just speaking it about it, I get chills. And I just wanted to start our conversation by saying, Trevor, you're an absolute legend, and thank you so much for completely transforming my life.
Well, I feel very humble. Thank you for saying that. It's been one of the biggest pleasures of my life to hear feedback like that from people like you, but I get it by email every day from people some people are doing the transformation experience for the 8th, 9th, 10th time because it gives them the tools and techniques to switch their life from being subject to chance and randomness and to take a a modicum of control over the life experiences they choose to have. And that's such a freeing thing for everybody. So it's my pleasure to have done it. I put it together because I needed it more than anybody. And I've used it in my businesses and in my private life. And so it just felt right at some point in time to share it with everybody, with the validation and credibility of having used it myself, with, for success. So it's music to my ears to hear you say that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, like I have the copy of the book right here, and Trevor, the book is turning green from the back, like literally green. I've read it like hundreds of times. It's it's remarkable, and usually I don't have any like intention for these podcasts. They're more so free flowing, but I do have a little bit of a mission with this podcast in particular. And my mission is to quite simply get three simple steps and transformation experience into as many hands as possible. There's this community on Twitter known as Money Twitter or Money X, and it's like probably close to millions of people that are very young, very entrepreneurial, that are just starting their journey. And I feel like transformation experience is exactly the greatest service that I could share with that audience because of your tagline. Life does not need to be a struggle, but a joyful trip. And that's the impact that you've had on my life. So I want to share that with as many people as possible. And that's my intention for this podcast.
Super. Thank you.
So I guess we'll start with what I think you do such a good job of is bringing authenticity to the self help world. And I want to start there because one line in Three Simple Steps, which said something to the tune of, I don't get any proceeds from book sales or course sales. They all go into funding cancer research. I'm just sharing this because it's exactly what worked for me and took me from being a kid in Liverpool to, I mean, the stuff that you've done is amazing. 7 companies, combined total for over 600 million, wrote 3 screenplays that turned into successful movies, New York Times bestselling author, successfully married for 40 plus years, a magician, tapped in spiritually, world traveler, animal sanctuary. Trevor, what haven't you done? And how, I don't even know what to say because the authenticity you brought to this book has been so life changing to see in the self help world. So I guess we could just start there. What made you want to even enter the self help world and share all that you've learned?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned all of those things. When you talk about it, it sounds like a lot, but I'm in the process of reading the Elon Musk biography right now, written by the guy Isaacson who did the Steve Jobs one. And when I read what he's done and what he's still doing, I feel like I've not even started yet. So I feel like I've been so lazy. What have I been doing with my time? So to answer your question, a lot of people you'll be talking to, they think there's something magical about being an entrepreneur. Like there's like a school you go to or something like that, or a secret school. Most entrepreneurs that I know that will quote unquote be called successful are really fixers. They're people who see something that they want a solution for, and you look for the solution and you say, okay, it doesn't exist. I'll have to go and fix this myself. And you become an entrepreneur by default. That's how I've kind of done it in my life. And so when it came to self-help and personal development, I've had issues with it. I've read pretty much everything that's out there. I've done the tapes, done the CDs, all the rest of it. And most of the time, I realized it made me feel better about the life I was living, but it didn't give me a better life. And I wanted the better life. And I was thinking there's something missing. And it's that thing you mentioned, that authenticity. So many of those books and films, etc., have been put together by people who hadn't achieved success before it caught on. Even though I like what they say and I want to believe what they say, I just felt there was that little thing missing. And so I wanted to write a self-help book many years before I started my first company, but I didn't think I felt like I'd be falling into the same trap of, talking a good game, but not necessarily playing a good game. And so I waited till I'd sold my first company, because that's a classic statement, right? I set an intention to sell my company for at least $100 million, even before I started the company, before I had a name for it. And then you use the tools and techniques that are in the transformation experience and in 3 Simple Steps to make that happen. And so then I felt, okay, now I can write about it. Now I've got that authenticity because I can say, look, I did all of this. I'm as flawed as anybody else who's out there. I need these tools and techniques. Look what I did with it. If I can do that, then with the same tools and techniques, the world's limitless for you. So that's where the authenticity comes from. So I appreciate you picking on that because it was very important to me, and that's why my proceeds have all been, all my proceeds since that book was published in 2012, have gone to cancer research and development. We've been developing a non-profit or a not-for-profit cancer treatment that doesn't have the side effect profile of current cancer treatments, and that's gone really well. We just finished phase 1 clinical trials
Wow.
with 0 side effects, which is very exciting.
Wow. I want to zero in on that because I think what's interesting about you, Trevor, is you talk about playing with energy. And I notice, like, if I go on YouTube, for instance, and I type in anything related to that, I'm going to either find somebody that makes their money by talking about that, or I'm going to find somebody that doesn't have a background in science. So they don't really
Right.
know what they're talking about. And I think a part of your authenticity is not only have you actually built and sold companies for over $100 million each, independent of this space, but you also have a background in physics, so you know what you're talking about.
Yeah, again, that's really important for authenticity. And when I was as a kid, I was just fascinated by the world around me, and I think I've just had this curiosity where I want to know how and why things work the way they do, and how and why they don't work in certain situations. So I've always been a perpetual student of the laws of energy. And what I find in the self-help and personal development world is that when that's missing, there's a requirement to believe in something. And that's a lot of pressure. And it feels very heavy, having to be positive all the time, having to believe in this law that isn't a law called the law of attraction. It's a lot of stress. And what happens is, people will read the book or they'll go on a course, a weekend seminar, and they'll get a boost of serotonin and feel better about stuff, but then nothing changes and you go down again. So you have to go and get another book or get another tape or whatever it may be. I'm showing my age here using the word cassette tape. That's how I started out reading and learning all these things. So the fact that I'm a physicist and I really try to understand how and why something works and how to play with energy in a better way, a way that's more beneficial. It takes the stress away. It takes the pressure away because you don't have to believe it anymore. You just have to do it. And you can do it with a completely cynical approach. You can say, this is rubbish, but I'm desperate. I'll do it anyway. And your life will change. And that's why I like the scientific background. It's not a case of me standing up and saying, hey, I'm a physicist. This has to be true. It's the support that goes around that this comes from a scientific fact. And you don't need to believe it because the fact will remain whether you like it or not. Quantize is science. Physics is physics. There's nothing we can do about it. Energy is energy. And I think also when so in the transformation experience, we go, as we go quite deeply into something that puts a lot of people off. We call it quantum physics, and people want to hide behind the sofa when they hear that term. But quantum just means how much, and physics is the study of the relationship between energy and matter. That's all it is. So what I've done is demystify it. So I've taken all the jargon away, and like we talk about this amazing thing, the Higgs field, but I call it cosmic glue because I can understand it when I'm thinking that there's an energy field out there that we can crawl through in our human way and draw to us those things that we want. So anyone who's interested in the transformation experience, don't worry, it's not a scientific lecture or anything like that. It's practical tools and techniques that are based on irrefutable laws of science, and that's why I get. But as you introduced me, I get those emails every day saying, in mostly capital letters, wow, OMG. Number one thing typically is I'm debt free for the first time in my life. And then 6 months later, it's all lowercase because now they're feeling confident and in charge. And they'll tell me, I just had it recently where someone sent me an email probably about 6 months ago and said they were out of debt for the first time, and it was really freeing. It was very important to get to that point. And then they sent me another email just a couple of days ago saying, I've left my corporate job and I am putting together a deal for $250 million for this other firm, for which I get a 7.5% finder's fee. Well, that's completely life-changing, right? That person's gone from a dead-end job, bringing home all the stress, relationships upside down at home and stuff like that, to living a financially independent life in a very short time. And that's all possible because you don't have to actually believe in anything. You just have to do the tools and techniques.
I think that's so powerful because I was like, I have no idea what Trevor's talking about, but it worked for Trevor and it's worked for so many different people. Let me investigate. Let me become curious. And Three Simple Steps was fantastic. It was like a year straight where I read it every single day. But the course transformation experience and understanding how things work the way they do and why they work the way they do, that was like the quantum breakthrough for me.
It's really important. So there's an interesting thing that happens, right, with us, and this again is a scientific fact. When we take knowledge in, and then we rush off to the next book, we rush off to the next idea, we rush off to the next TV channel, it fades. It goes to nothing. It doesn't do us any benefit. So what we do with the transformation experience is we take the knowledge that's in Three Simple Steps, we go a little bit deeper with it, and we allow ourselves to sit with it. So when knowledge sinks in, it's also energy, believe it or not. Knowledge also is energy, and energy needs to play just the same as our tongues and our brains do. And so the knowledge actually connects. And it's that experience that everybody's had, which is like, this is an interesting fact. Let me think about this for a bit. And then you maybe go for a walk and you come back and you say, I seem to know much more than that little bit of knowledge. You know, a really good book can do that to you. You can read a great book and on a new subject, and then you very quickly you feel like an expert, you know. And a good example for me is I used to want to have a boat, so I would go window shopping for a boat, and I would go to a boat show. You know, I was living in Florida at the time, and there was a lot of them. And the first boat I would get on would probably be a $200,000 little putt boat that goes around the harbour. By the end of the day, I'd be standing on a 3-stateroom ocean-going yacht that probably was available for 30 million. And I'd turn myself into an expert just during that day, just by being on the boats and being in that environment. And I remember being in that situation and being on this beautiful ocean-going yacht, talking to the sales guy about the bow thrusters. How did I know about bow thrusters? I'd absorbed this extra knowledge just by being in that place for a period of time. And the funny thing was, I was talking to him like I was an expert sailor and I was an expert boat handler and all this kind of stuff, just because I put myself in that environment and allowed the information to come in. And it's amazing what happens when you do that. So in the transformation experience, we get these bites of knowledge, and then we sit with them in certain ways and play with them. It's hard to reprogram our brains unless we make them habits. So we play with them in a way. The entrepreneur, one of the entrepreneur skills, which other people call wizardry skills if they want, is the ability to stand back a little bit and observe, then assess the situation, and then act in a way that's more beneficial than you would have had if you went rushing in. And so that's why the transformation experience does what you said. It's life-changing because of that.
What I find so enlightening about the transformation experience is every time I go through it, I try to go through it at least twice a year. I just went through it recently in the summertime, and then again once with the new illustrations, which are fantastic, by the way. Really been
Thank you.
enjoying those. I notice every time I go through it, my life changes every single time. Like I just did my commitment ritual a couple months ago, and since then, new travel, new look, like everything you say, new travel, new locations, new businesses, new opportunities, everything starts to unfold. And for me, the journey has been becoming okay with the change, not the unleashing the magic. It's like, yo, are you ready for life to completely transform again? So I think it would be really useful for you to say a few words on change, because I think a lot of people say they want to change their life, but with transformation, you literally can change your life. And it's like the willingness. Am I ready? Am I ready to embark on the greatest adventure of my life?
You're right. And you mentioned the magic phrase there, commitment ritual. That's such an important thing to do. A lot of people are afraid of doing that because they are afraid of the change. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with being scared of change. There's nothing wrong with deciding not to do a transformation experience. So long as you're happy with your decision and you don't, complain about life when life becomes more random. There's nothing wrong with saying, okay, I'm happy where I am. I'm going to stay like I am. If you're more of an adventurer and you say, okay, I thought life would be a bit more fun than this. I always wanted to travel. I always wanted to have brilliant relationships, and something's not happening there. There's something not quite right. And somebody comes and offers you a chance to say, okay, do this and it'll fix itself for you. In that point, you have to be ready to accept the change, because what happens is you're now playing with energy. And when we deliberately play with energy, like Alan Watts would call it, a playing of energy. When we do that on purpose, we call out to, let's call it life. We call out to life, and we ask life to fix this for us. And life says, yeah, sure, if that's what you want, yeah, I'll do that for you. But in fixing it, often that means that I have to unravel a lot of this person's thinking. I have to unravel their life a little bit to free them up in order to go and get the thing that they want. That's a really a powerful point, but that's why I call on a commitment ritual, because you have to be prepared for everything to change. You can hope that everything's going to change and all the people you love right now are going to come along with you and pat you on the back and give you a round of applause. You can want for that. My experience, that rarely happens. The opposite happens. People say, "Who the hell do you think you are? Come back to the quicksand. Come back to the warm soup. It's lovely in here. We're all of like-mindedness. We all like being completely, bored to death by life." So, but if you're a person who doesn't want to be bored to death by life, then you're going to have to say, you know what, stuff is going to change. I've moved, I think, 14 times since 2000, I think, for opportunities, for things to do, for people to meet, for relationships, and for business, and for all kinds of, and for fun, right? So your location is likely to change. Your job and vocation, definitely, as you've experienced, is going to change dramatically. Relationships, you've all of a sudden, where were these magnificent people before? They weren't in my life. Now I've committed to change. All of a sudden, these amazing people show up. Incredible people who inspire you to want to be a better person, and that's a priceless thing. But I hope this goes out to everyone who's doing the transformation experience and avoids the commitment ritual, because there are some people that do avoid it because change can be scary.
Yeah. I find how quickly things start to unravel. Like for me, it feels like reality starts to reconfigure itself immediately after I do the commitment ritual. And I think it would be awesome if you could speak a little bit about the importance of trusting life in that unraveling, because in my experience it has always led to the greatest unfoldment, but at the time I resisted it. I may have taken a little bit longer to kind of go along with the flow, but every time I surrendered and allowed life to take over in a way, it's always taken me on the most loving, the most epic, the most gratifying adventure that I could hope for. So what's the importance of trusting the unraveling and letting life almost lead the show in a way?
I think a little humility as a human being helps, right? So if you're calling upon the power of life to change things for you, what kind of arrogant person, male or female, would then say, "But I'll keep hold of the steering wheel. I'm going to make it happen"? Because we're brought up. I think many of us are brought up to think that the path to success with balance, as I call it, you can be successful working 16-hour days, no doubt about it. Probably on your third relationship, your kids don't know who you are. Your life is likely to be disrupted. What I'm talking about is success with balance. I only work a couple of hours a day, and it's been like that ever since I've never grown up, but when I came into the grown-up world, I've never had another employee in any of my companies, and they're all impactful companies. And that's because I like the balance. I'm a lazy guy. I like to lie in a hammock and stare at the canopy of trees. That's for me is a good life. And if you can do that and at the same time make a few hundred million, then it's a really great life. In order to do that, you do have to get your mentality into a place where it's okay to take your hands off the wheel. It's okay or some people say, take your hands off the oars and allow the power of the energy, because otherwise you resist, like you use your word resisted, right? So otherwise we're resisting this energy that's trying to get into our lives to help us. And it becomes a little bit chaotic. And it also allows you then to be open to, okay, I'd never seen that person before, but now I'm interested in that person. Let me go and talk to that person. Whereas previously you probably wouldn't have even seen the person because you're resisting over here. And or I've had, like I've had to make myself sit on my hands at times. And whenever I do that, the phone goes, and it's someone who I've never heard from before who says, "Oh, I just heard about you. I wanted to talk to you about this opportunity." That wouldn't happen if I was resisting all the time. So taking your hands off the oars is a skill. It takes practice. It takes a degree of courage. And that's why the transformation experience really exists, because trying to do that on your own could be pretty lonely and pretty hard. And, this path, the path to success with balance, is not well traveled. And it can at times feel pretty lonely. I don't know if you experience that, especially in the early part of that unraveling, when all those people who are around you criticizing and complaining about you and trying to pull you back a little bit, and you're pushing forward. What it's like being in the military. Once you step forward, you can't. The ranks close behind you. You can't step back, and it can feel a bit lonely. So the transformation experience is there as a helping hand, and with continuous reminders of take your hands off the oars. Don't try to fix this. Don't try to figure out how is this going to happen. Just have your intention, have your big movie in your head. You might call it a mini mind movie. Play a mini mind movie, but don't ask how. Obviously, when you do that for the first time, you're full of self-doubt because you've never done it before. And so it just takes the practice, like you've experienced. Just takes time to create these new habits and to rewire this little enemy within, as I call it, the reticular activation system. It's a tricky little bugger, and requires clever work to make sure that our reticular activation system keeps us moving in a direction that's beneficial.
Absolutely. It's always so remarkable because when I listen to Trev's keys and I listen about the adventures that you've gone on and just the magical coincidences that have unraveled, I always notice that it's like closely tied to sitting on your hands. And at one point I was like, Trevor works 2 hours a day. How is all these amazing coincidences happening? And whether it was like, you're just walking past the house and the person just put it on sale that day, or it's something else, it's just like I found that the more time I spend in nature, the more I deepen my connection, the more I start getting little hinges of intuition of what's about to happen before it happens. And what I find very curious about you is you've been on the cutting edge of a lot of different things from Bitcoin. I noticed in Trev's keys there was like a Bitcoin talk really early on, which really helped me. Thank you, Trevor. And also AI, and also being on the cutting edge of spirituality and business and science, and kind of seeing how everything is the same, it's not different. And I just want to, it would be awesome if you could share a little bit about the role that connecting in nature has played in your ability to kind of see where the world is heading before it gets there.
Right. It's so it tends to pull in a certain direction. So once we get control of our mentality, and you don't have to be a saint. No one has to be a saint. You just have to realize that some of the words I'm using aren't in my best interest. Some of the thoughts I'm having could be self-sabotaging. I'll change some of them. So that's all it is. Tiny little differences make a huge change in people's lives. Once you get the mentality control, what you've really done is through neuroplasticity, you've created new neurons and also new connections between the neurons. Now, when that happened when you were 5 years old, or when one was 5 years old, probably the next thing you did was connect those neurons to a TV screen, a cartoon, or something, or a children's book or something. And that's okay. As an adult, we probably tune into negative headlines, sensational news headlines, and so they then become fixed, so when you take control of your mentality, what you want to do then is connect these beautiful, pure neural pathways in some other way. I call it plugging in. So I'm a big preacher, if you like, on the importance of scheduling getting into nature. Make getting into nature as important, if not more important, than anything else that you do in your life. And then what happens is when we get into there, we are surrounded by nothing but connection. And the way this works is because, scientific fact is that everything is energy. We don't actually exist like this. Okay, we're creating this. So you and I are made of the same little particles, the same fermions and bosons. This computer is made of the same stuff. My microphone is made of the same stuff. My clothes, everything's made of exactly the same stuff. And where can you find more of that stuff that isn't polluted by fear? It's in nature. And so you go out into nature and you simply allow your fermions and bosons to go out and play. Go play with a tree. Go play in the grass. And so when we do that, we connect even deeper. And for the longest time, in physics in particular, there was a thought that in between the particles, in between the electrons, in between the atoms, there was empty space. And a lot of the sages would say everything's connected. Well, it's hard to be connected if there's empty space. Now we know for a fact that this field, this cosmic glue, connects everything to everything, and everyone to everything, and everyone to everyone. And so therefore, when we go into nature, we give ourselves the opportunity to almost like shower or be in a bath of energy. And when we connect there, we can reach through that energy. We can do it with our conscious with our minds, with our consciousness. I call it the torso wand, the mind, heart, solar plexus. And so we can reach into the cosmic glue and we could say, I want more of this. And it could be anything. It could be, I want more money, or it could be, I want more love, or it could be, I want more excitement in my job. I want more good stuff happening to me. And we just go quietly into nature and connect and send out those things that we want. And the most beautiful part of that is that nature doesn't judge. It doesn't say that's no good, or that's not enough, or don't be crazy. Nature will give us what we ask for. And that's a huge secret that a lot of people have been told differently. They've been saying, just everything's chance, everything's random, and it's not. So you can have anything you want. You can be anyone you want, and you can feel any way you want to feel, but you need help. And the help is out there in nature, because it's the easiest playground to practice playing with energy in. And that's it. So in transformation experience, there's certain tools and techniques I add to get out into nature, go do this. And, the feedback from those is fantastic. People do have a lot of what previously would have been considered psychic experiences, and things come through that weren't there before, and at first it can be a bit scary, and then it gets really exciting. And all that's happening is that as a human, we are only capable of discerning 0.0035% of the electromagnetic spectrum. So if you do reverse maths, it means there's something like 300,000 times more stuff in front of me that I can't see. And so when we get into nature and we connect and we play with energy a bit more, I get to see a little bit extra. I get to have a little different experience. I get to hear a tree. Was that tree saying something to me? Where did that idea come from? Did it just pop out of the sky, or did the tree help me? Why are these animals walking up to me and not scared of me? All of these experiences are simply because we stretch our senses a little bit more than we've been allowed to through, our upbringing and schooling and also workplaces. So that's the importance of connecting. So it's funny when people say, we only work 2 hours a day. Yeah, but I absolutely do 2 to 3 hours out in nature every single day. And although it doesn't sound, it sounds like laziness. Of course, it's not really laziness. I'm deliberately putting myself in a position to connect to new ideas, new people, new things.
I've noticed, I was listening to an interview you did where somebody was amazed at the fact that you only work 2 to 4 hours. And you're like, well, if I add up the time I spend in nature, I work a full 10-hour day just like everybody else. That's as a entrepreneur. And I find nature to be so important because for me, I noticed that the more time I spent in nature, the more the programming of society started to fall off. And it was also kind of bringing me into deeper union with reality in a more fundamental sense. And it led to not only deepening my connection and opening up my sensitivity to what is always around me, but I can't, pick up on it. But it also changed the way I've experienced the death of loved ones. I noticed last year, my grandpa passed away. And after my grandpa passed away, I was in the hospital room with him with the body, and I felt more connected to my grandpa after he passed away than when he was even in the physical body. And it just felt like the sensitivity of what is all around us just opens up the more time I spend in nature. And I know you've also had remarkable experiences with the psychic bridge.
Yeah, and I am still, so I've built the bridge. It's been a little shaky at times, but it's there. But I want to caution a little bit on when we talk about these things. It's very easy to fall into what some people would call, the woo-woo, right? What we want to believe, what we want to hear, which might not be based on fact. What you've just described is actually based on nothing else but fact. It's absolute fact. So if we go into quantum physics and we take a subset of physics, which most people have heard of, I think, called string theory, we know beyond a shadow of doubt, because the maths points this way, the mathematics just tells us this, that in order for anything to exist, right? Anything to exist, it has to exist simultaneously in at least 10 dimensions. And you and I as humans are only aware of 3 of those. Some people argue that time is a fourth dimension, but it's not. That's a human construction to help us not go mad as we go through these lives. So when you sit with that, hugging the tree, that information, what you will learn, what comes to us, is that means that nothing can die. So it's quite possible that, my body's going to wear out, right? It's been hit by radiation every day. It's a dense place. There's stresses, there's toxins, too much wine or whatever it is that we do to ourselves. At some point, I'm going to have to get another vehicle. This one's not going to carry on anymore. And so I'm going to have to abandon it and get another vehicle. When this vehicle's finished, it's just the vehicle. It's just it's just our 3 dimensions. There's still the other 7 dimensions that I'm existing in. And that's why I say, if we can learn to stretch our senses a little bit, you can build a bridge to that. Now, I was very lucky in life because I was with my wife 40 years, as you mentioned earlier. She died in December 2020. We had it was during COVID. It wasn't from COVID, but it was during COVID, and we were in the intensive care unit, and it was very lonely because people weren't allowed to visit. I had to break in, basically, to visit my own wife. But we had 6 days to plan for her death. We knew she was going to die on the 6th day. And that was determined by the doctors. They couldn't do anything to help her anymore. And it was just her vehicle was exhausted, right? She was absolutely exhausted physically. And so she schooled me and told me to build a psychic bridge. And these are the things you're going to have to do. I didn't want to hear any of this. I was just too grief-stricken. Not even sure I wanted to carry on as a human, to be honest with you. I actually ended up doing, we talked before about commitment ritual. It's just as important in the commitment ritual for the other things in life, not just business, not just art. It's important for, do I want to continue decisions? And because I didn't want to hear it, I didn't. After she died, or left her body, whatever people prefer to say, I didn't do the things that she'd asked me to do. 2 months after she died, she was clairvoyant and clairaudient in her life. She was also an oncology nurse. She was very sensitive, very strong empath. So 2 months later, she contacted me and reprimanded me for not doing the things that she told me to do. So I got to work and I started to build the psychic bridge back. Now, this is all recorded in journals in some of my Trevor Gs. I have a group called the Guild, which you're probably familiar with, and I do them exclusively for the Guild, once a week minimum. And so when I was building part of the bridge back to Lynn, and it went well, then I would record that and pass on that information. I think it's been really helpful to a lot of people because they're doing similar things and they're having what you just experienced, a much better relationship with someone who was quote unquote departed than they had when they were alive. Because when they were alive, they were held in their 3-dimensional body, but also their 3-dimensional thinking. And now they're in a place where their thinking is much expanded. And that's so valuable. So my conversations with Lynn are quite different to the ones we had when she was in the physical body. Whereas when she was in the 3-dimensional body, I would have to try and interpret what did she mean by that. And it's the classic, a woman will say, she'll remember something I said 20 years before and said, tell me off for it, right? Beyond that, the communication is crystal clear. There is no need to interpret. There is no room for doubt of what the message is that I'm getting. And unlike where people see, this is another thing that I'm hoping to fix through this conversation and through journaling this situation. I'm actually writing a movie about this whole experience. If I was to look on television, I was to see a TV medium, and they say, and the conversation lasts 2 minutes, and it's very ambiguous, and did he like music? Silly questions like that, and then they say, the departed one is holding up some pink carnations. That's their way of saying they love you. I'm afraid I believe all that is complete nonsense, because when Lynn came back to tell me off for not doing the things I was doing, she spoke for me for 1 hour and 20 minutes, and I have it recorded. I've shared some of it with some members of the transformation experience, and some of my. I have an entrepreneur group called the Vibrational Leadership Sanctum. So with those people, I've shared this because there's really important messages for them too. In that this is why we're doing what we're doing. So the psychic bridge is very real, very scientific. And if anyone's listening to this or watching this, and they're in a place where they're finding it really hard, Because I know what it's, I now know what it's like. I mean, it's not like Lynn died and I danced a jig for the next. I mean, I was really in a dark place for about. She said actually I'd be in a dark place for about a year, but I would surprise myself how quickly I recover. And then one day, I started doing all the things that she told me to do, including one of which was she said specifically, keep moving from the waist down. She didn't say to keep moving your legs. She said keep moving from the waist down, and I knew what she was talking about. I knew what she meant. I couldn't imagine holding another woman's hand at that point. I couldn't imagine being close to another woman at that point. It just seemed impossible. But I listened and I did the things. And one of the things she asked me to do was to start shamanic dancing. Believe me, no one was to see me dance. So this is a really uncomfortable thing for me to do. It took a lot of courage for me to do these things, and with the way my personality, I'm more introverted than people will probably realize. And that opened up this other sort of more communication portals. It opened up all these things. But all of this came in 1 hour, 20 minutes conversation of very specific instructions and information. And then I went and did the commitment ritual. And I decided, okay, you know what? I've got an amazing adventure ahead. She said, another 30 years. So I've got an amazing adventure ahead. I'm going to do some fantastic things and experiences. I don't want to do them alone. Being alone sucks, right? I thought I'd be brilliant in my own company. I didn't think I needed anybody, but now I needed a companion. And so I made my commitment ritual. And that very day, I got an additional message from Lynn saying, it's time to send Jess a message. And Jess is someone I hadn't met face to face before, but I did, strangely, send a text message. And a week later, I was in Canada where she was living, and we connected, and that was it. And so she and I actually got married at the end of last year. So again, the commitment ritual is so important, changes your life.
Wow. I find it very fascinating how you have a book titled Three Simple Steps, and there's also been three women that have played such a transformational role in your life. I remember reading the story about your mother, and I'm so happy to hear you're making a movie out of it, because that story alone I've shared with so many different family members and has had such a profound impact on them. But my question is more so just the magic of the three women in your life and how they've impacted you with the feminine spirit.
I'm a very lucky guy. I think I'm so lucky to have had that. My mother was a very strong spirited woman. She was a very determined woman, and she had this way of observing. And the thing was, she kind of taught me that because I would observe her observing. So she would stop and observe a flower for a particularly long time, and she would tell me why she's doing this and what she's doing. And so I was fascinated by that. And I always remember, I forget how old I was, but probably about 9 or something like that, when she had been diagnosed with breast cancer and given 6 months to live in a time when there really weren't any treatments. And I was there. We didn't have a vehicle. We grew up poor, so I was there at the hospital. She wasn't going to leave 3 little kids at home, so I was at the hospital when this diagnosis was given, or prognosis was given. And I was in the corridor outside the doctor's office, and I heard her say, "Young man, I'll decide when I'm going to die, not you." She was really quite sure about it. And then one day I was at home and I watched her. She looked through the little windows, broken windows we have above the sink in the kitchen, and she looked up at the sky and she said, "I'm not leaving until my kids are grown up and safe." And, I thought, wow, sometimes she scared me, but she's scaring God too. It's really powerful thing. So I observed that. And then she realized that I had something about me that was like a little different to my brother and sister. And that was this curiosity. I wanted to know how and why things worked. And so she taught me what indefatigable feels like. So whenever I'm in a business meeting, there's nothing that can come my way that can be anything like she was facing in that point. And that gives me that sense of, why am I making such a big deal of this? Why am I worrying about this? It's nothing compared to being told as a mother of 3 young children that you're going to die in 6 months. So that was really strong and powerful for me. And also she helped me understand nature in a different way. And she then introduced me to Lynn, to my wife. So I was on leave, and took her to the hospital for some pain treatment. I think it was like a chemotherapy that they would inject to try and reduce the pain, because the cancer was in her bones at that point. And I was probably, I forget what I was, 20 years old, I think. And And she stopped. She said, stop. I'm wheeling her in the corridor. And she goes, stop. I thought, what's the matter? And we waited, literally. It seemed like a long time. I thought maybe she was going to be sick or something, because she just sat there and with her hand up like this, like, wait. And I was looking around, and then the door opened, and Lynn stepped out, who was an oncology nurse at the time. And my mother lit up and she said, Trevor? Lynn, Trevor. And that was it. And I got hit by a lightning strike in the heart, and I was done, toasted. So she passed the baton on. My mother died a year after that. She passed the baton on to Lynn, who then schooled me and trained me further for the next 40 years. And then Lynn has, as recently as we were just talking about, passed the baton on to Jess, who is a transformation graduate herself. She's done the transformation experience a few times, and she's the one who's done all the illustrations for it, for the latest version.
I find that thread that's kind of unraveling in your life to be so fascinating, because it feels like, when I think about you, Trevor, it feels like you're on the cutting edge of ushering in the future of humanity almost. And I know that sounds like a big claim, but that's truly how it feels when I see the different types of things that you're up to, and the way that you've impacted me with the cutting edge of combining science with business and spirituality and magic, and just demystifying everything. I'm very curious, if you're, as much as you're willing to share, about your vision for the VLSC, for transformation experience, for even trevorgblake.com, your content, podcasting, everything, just the overall vision behind that for the next 30 years.
So it's the vision that was handed to me by Lynn in that hour and 20 minutes. So if I choose, that was how it was put to me. If I choose, my role is to create hundreds of thousands of vibrational leaders. Now, I had to really think about that. What's a vibrational leader? And that's why I called the first group I put together, I called it the Vibrational Leadership Sanctum, because I was going to try and get my head around what's that going to be like, and how is that going to feel? And then, of course, not everybody wants to be a vibrational leader. That's fine. So hundreds of thousands of vibrational leaders will be people who can show that these aren't three separate silos, that, science, spirituality, and success can all come together in a balanced way. And that's my role. How I'm going to do it? With people like you, I hope. But I don't know. She didn't tell me that bit. She said, you just have to decide if you want to do it or not. And then she said, the clues will be everywhere. So I'm flowing with that, and I'm having such a blast. I'm actually, people calling me Benjamin Button now, because I seem to be getting younger. Obviously, I'm going to need more energy, I think. I'm reverse aging at the moment. So it's a great adventure, and I really don't know how it's going to turn out. I do know that a lot of travel is involved. If I was to turn my camera around, I've got a big atlas on the wall with pins in it that I know I'm going to be visiting. So that was also given to me. I can't wait. Looking forward to it. But it is a lonely road. So the more people who want to get in on this and be part of this, the better. So you're doing me a great service just by sharing it, for which I thank you.
Yeah, I honestly am so excited to get this into the hands of a lot of my entrepreneurial friends that do have very large audiences. They have like hundreds of thousands of followers on Twitter, now X, YouTube, whatever it is. And for me, it fills my heart with so much satisfaction and joy, because it's getting to participate in the magic that's unfolding. And it's also it's like the greatest gift that I can give to another human being.
Yeah,
Sharing
that's really
transformation experience, sharing 3 simple steps.
That's beautifully said. Like everything, though, I come back to, it feels good, but also there's some science behind this, right? So the prevailing energy of the earth has changed dramatically. Most people have felt it in some way, but didn't understand what was happening. So we have to give them labels, because it's as pretty dumb three-dimensional creatures. We need pictures and labels in order to understand anything. And so we call it masculine energy and feminine energy. And of course, we have both in us, right? So, but as a man, I probably have leaned more into the masculine side, but my businesses have really leaned into the feminine side, thanks to my mother and my wife, who were great leading lights and showed me the power of intuition for making really good decisions, right? So it's a balance. but the general prevailing energy has switched from that dominant masculine energy, which is very linear. It's like build a railroad step by step, get a clipboard. That mentality, lots of analysis, and also building hierarchies and things like that. They're all tumbling down, as you can tell. You can just go to any strip mall and you can see all those companies that were household names even just a short time ago. They don't exist anymore because they weren't able to adapt quickly enough. And so really the more common business models that we're finding today are very much the hub model that I like so much, where you form relationships with vendors and contractors rather than supervising employees. It's just all changed around it. So in that change, the linear style has moved into the feminine style more, which is spinning. It's really fast. So technological change is like exhausting. That's why you said you're on the cutting edge. It's because I didn't want to get left behind. If you're not in that energy, you will get left behind. It's also a very cutthroat energy in a way. Most of I love anthropology, and so when I studied female warriors before 1284, when the feminine energy was last sort of dominant, they didn't go back and pick up. Well, they didn't take prisoners because prisoners would use up valuable resources like food, and they didn't stop to pick up their wounded for the same reason. They had this beautiful nurturing, like, I'm going to take care of my tribe, I'm going to take care of my country or my state. Thank you for your service, but I can't do anything about this. Survival is really important. And I know that if I had been a warrior back then, a male warrior, I would have stopped and gone for pick up the wounded, and I would have taken prisoners, and they probably would have been terribly bad decisions. So when you translate that to the modern world, and we think about entrepreneur, that spinning. We see it everywhere. We're seeing, you can be out of business overnight with new technology. You have to get in it. You have to get on board that spinning energy, or you will get left behind. So that's one thing I just love talking about, and what I'm planning, what my role is with the vibrational leadership is to help people understand this change, this prevailing, and what's going to happen for the next few hundred years, and how to match that mentally and also energetically for your benefit and for the benefit of the people. But if I was to put it very, very quickly, this is a passion of mine, so I can ramble on forever. So you can tell me to stop.
I love it. I love it.
But if I was to put it, how can I put it really succinctly? The days of what's in it for me are gone, and a lot of people haven't caught up with that yet. The day of how do I contribute is here, because energy has a resonance always. The more we lift somebody up, the more we also get uplifted in consequence. So I have a lovely tool that's in the transformation experience called the grocery store challenge. And you go to a grocery store, observe someone having a bad day, go lift them up, use their name, say, how's your day going, Bob? And Bob will go, oh my God, he's used my name. And he lifts up. That's not just that. That's a nice thing to do. It's good. It's a kind thing to do, but also you feel your own energy get lifted up equally. So if you lift up the energy of 5 people, you get lifted up 5% or whatever. So this is a kind of new way of thinking. So it changes my complete style as an entrepreneur. Okay, the supervisory Trevor and the analytical Trevor have been replaced to a great degree by the peer-on-peer trust Trevor, and we don't need to negotiate, do we? What's the price, Trevor? It's all changed. And so I hope you are able to find the entrepreneurs that are wondering what it is that's changing. I meet a lot of entrepreneurs who say something's different. I can't quite feel what it is. And then we have this beautiful conversation about switching in energy and what that means practically. That's very powerful.
Right. I noticed you mentioned the grocery store challenge. There's been so many incredible tools and techniques throughout transformation experience. Literally, I don't like the word try. I'm going to correct myself. I don't use the word try, but I employ as many as possible. And the impact that they've had on my life, from the morning priming, from jumping out of bed, with joy like a kid on Christmas, to mirror work, to screaming in the car, to writing intentions, mind movies. You've talked about controlling mentality. You talked about the power of nature. We've hinted on meditation, things like that. But I'm curious about the role the daily nap has played in your unfoldment and your success.
I can't imagine a day without doing it now. And I read the studies that showed that, NASA's pilots take a nap after 12 o'clock, 12 noon, and it's required, it's mandatory, and their reflex performance goes up 34%. So there's a lot of really good neuroscience behind why a quick nap is important. I find it does something else. I find when I take like an after lunch nap, and I do it on purpose, I don't go deep into REM sleep. I kind of go into this twilight zone, this area that's not quite here. Like Alan Watts would say, here you are, here you aren't. Because we do, our particles do flicker on and off at an incredibly fast rate. We're really like little movies. If all of our particles were jiggling at the same rate at the same time, we would flick in and out of existence. We wouldn't notice because it's so fast, which is fascinating. But I feel that nap is almost like a portway to it, or a door to it. So you're in that. I call it my twilight moments, and so amazing things have happened in that 20 to 30 minutes. So much so that I look forward to it every single day. And today's no different. So 12:30, that's exactly what I will be doing. And I find I get an adventure in there that I couldn't possibly imagine having any other ways. I also get sometimes just lightning bolts of ideas, and I'll come out of it saying, why didn't I think of that before? I spent 2 hours this morning trying to figure that out, and I spent 20 minutes falling asleep, but I've got the answer already. Why don't I just stay asleep? So that's why. So napping it's not something I've done. So I've been using this technique now for probably the last 10 to 15 years. But I wish I had started when I was much younger. I wish I'd understood or known about the science when I was much younger.
Yeah, I was also very curious. I think it was on one of the Trev's keys where you said something to the tune of, you've never had a fast food burger and you never had a can of Coke. And what I'm curious about is the role that diet plays in mentality control, deepening your connection, and staying in a state of knowing, if any role.
Yeah, it's not so. So I've never had fast food. I actually don't. I can't understand why somebody would poison themselves on purpose, but I know some people do. Right? Some people do that. So I grew up with parents who smoked 40 cigarettes a day. Benson and Hedges number 6 tip. They used to send me when I was born in Liverpool. They didn't have rules about how old you are to buy cigarettes in those days, and so they would send me to the corner shop at the bottom of the street, and I would buy 20 Benson and Hedges, so number 6 tipped. And they just were constant chain smokes. And so I lived in a toxic environment. And that's why I fell in love with the countryside, because I could get out of that. And that blue smoke, that blue haze. I couldn't get my head around why my parents would deliberately poison themselves. And I realized, my mother's breast cancer was being caused by the smoking. A lot of people don't realize that, but that stuff gets in the fat cells. And there it sits until it wants to do something else. And so that kind of extended into, okay, so why would I put rat poison in my body? Why would I drink a Coca-Cola? Why would I have a pizza when I know that what's in those things is poison? It's not going to do me any good. So for me, it was never a difficult decision to avoid those things, because there's so much good stuff out there. It takes a bit of effort to find, but now we have the internet. You can find proper flour that's properly milled, almost anywhere. In fact, we get ours shipped in from New York. There's been a Netflix documentary on it. It was fantastic stuff. Coffee that's actually good for you. Why would you drink the acidic coffee? It's just crazy. It's mad. But people just do that. And it's not no one's fault. And what happens is, at the back of our necks is a little group of neurons called reticular activation system. And this is the tricky bugger I keep talking about that we have to reprogram. It doesn't have emotion. But what it does, it works like a Google algorithm. There's only humans and reptiles that have this part of the brain, in the brainstem. It works like a Google algorithm in that it watches what you pay attention to, and it gives you more of that. And when I teach this, when I talk about it, and it's like lights come on for people. That's why you keep experiencing the same things. That's why you become addicted to fast food. That's why when your friend gets all excited and says, "I got a brand new white Mercedes, come look at it," your reticular activation system takes notice of that. And the next day, you've never seen that car before in your life. The next day, you see them everywhere. It's this. So the beautiful that we need this. We go mad if we didn't have this. We're bombarded by 2 billion bits of information every second. this filters out all but 147 bytes. It's a very, very small part of the world that we get to play in. And once you know that, you think, okay, so I've only got 147. Why would I fill those up with poison, with paying attention to news headlines, with drama, with reality TV? Why would I waste them? I want to do something more beneficial. So you just naturally, when you think this way, just naturally find yourself drawn to a more healthy lifestyle. And what used to be difficult, like, I never used to like working out. Now I love it, but only because I've changed the programming. So, so I go to there's a gym just down below me here, and so I'm in this, 3 times a week, 2 or 3 times a week, and I really enjoy myself. It's quite funny because they have 6 TVs, and if I'm in there on my own, I switch them all over to the cartoon channel. Because otherwise everyone's on blasting headlines at you, and I think, no, I want to watch SpongeBob.
Speaking of cartoon channels, why is Winnie the Pooh one of your all-time favorite characters?
It was his it was his creator's language, really. The lines he gave to Winnie the Pooh, that what's your favorite day? Today, because that was yesterday, and today wouldn't come till tomorrow. I just love those beautiful ways of saying things, and it makes sort of profound sense. So I found in my life has been surrounded by Winnie the Pooh characters, but also Eeyores. I've met an awful lot of Eeyores. Well, what's the point? Because it's going to rain today anyway. The market's going to go down, I'm sure. House prices always go. I've lived with a lot of those people in my life, and so if I read or look at or watch Winnie the Pooh, it kind of gives me clues of how to deal with all that, how to shut off the complainers, without being rude. How to use humor and clever words sometimes to demystify things, but also to tone some things down. So that's one of the reasons I'm learning a whole new side to literature, because Jess my wife is a creator and an illustrator. So she's a writer and illustrator of 5 children's books. She just won a huge prize in Canada for one of her books. And so I'm watching how she creates this magic that I take 270 words to talk about in 3 simple steps. And she somehow manages to get the same message across to children in 1 line. It's just mind blowing to me. So it's so much fun. So I think I started off with children's books, and suddenly here I am at this stage of my life back in children's books again, which is really fun.
I'm very curious to know, in 30 years, I know you've written a lot about your story in 3 simple steps, but looking back, when you were that kid in Liverpool and you were in the library and you found these biographies that inspired you greatly, I'm very curious, will you ever write the Trevor Blake biography?
No, I won't. Because because autobiographies aren't very good, because there's the three perceptions. There's how we think of ourselves, there's how we perceive ourselves, there's how we think other people see us, and then there's the way other people actually see us. And they're very 3 different perspectives, which is why I kind of like biographies. So I'm enjoying the Elon Musk because it's written by an observer. It's just Isaac, I think Walter Isaacson. He's observing this character and this character's path, and is allowed to observe it and write about it without filter, without editing, and it's amazing. It's really good. So I love biographies because they're written by somebody observing. If I was to write about me, I would miss an awful lot of the nuances. I probably wouldn't write about my flaws as much, and whereas someone else is, I know from other people who observe me what they say. They say, like, you're very direct, you're almost rude at times, and also you talk so fast, and you're fast brained and all that stuff. But I wouldn't. If I was writing about me, I wouldn't write about that. So
Remarkable. I mean, I've been following you since just like when I started university, from like the book to Physics of Success to Transformation Experience. Everything has just touched me so deeply, and like even in preparation for our conversation, I've had like literally hundreds of questions, but I'll save majority of those for the guild calls. I'm part of the guild as well. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I know the importance of structuring your day and the importance of taking a break, but I'm just curious, what would you say to just those entrepreneurs that have an itchling that something else might be out there, something different that doesn't turn life into such a heavy burden, but can turn it into a playing of energy, a playing of magic, and letting those adventures unfold in our life experience. What would you say to some of those listeners that are probably, very fired up from just experiencing your energy and are very curious about taking the next step? What would the next step be, in your opinion, for those individuals?
This might sound a bit self-serving, a bit arrogant. There is nothing like the transformation experience out there except the transformation experience. I call it the last course you ever need to do, the last course you ever need to purchase. No more weekend seminars. Sorry to any other personal development people out there, but sorry. I mean, I know people who have spent a fortune, right, trying to be better tomorrow than they are today. It's so much simpler than that. All you need is inside you. All anyone needs comes from inside ourselves. We just need to find a way of opening up, letting it out. And so the transformation experience does that. It unravels people. First of all, that's why it takes 30 days, 40 days to do it. You've got to unravel first and find out who you actually are. And you're not the person you thought you were. Okay, you're not the person that society has labeled. You're not the person your parents have called you. You are very beautiful. Everyone's really spectacular. And letting a little bit of that out, that changes everything. So as an entrepreneur, that will open up your business to run in a completely different way, and for you to free yourself up to run it in a completely different way, and you'll start having fun again. And it's all about fun. That's the next step. Let's find a way to have fun again.
That brings me to one last question. Your tagline, I'm very curious. Your tagline, make a positive difference in somebody's life, have fun doing it, and share in the material and spiritual rewards that come as a result of setting that energy in motion. I'm curious about was that like a download type of mission that it just came to you, or was this something that you conjured up more consciously?
So it was a challenge to me, given to me by an investor that I had in one of my companies, because I find, we talk about entrepreneurs, but I find investors are actually somewhat slower to come to terms with all of this, with the physics, with the feminine energy. Entrepreneurs, I find most of them are wide open to, let's show me a better way, I'll do it. I want some help. But investors have, I know it shouldn't generalize, and I'm not being negative, just observing that they can be very traditional and structured in the way that once they put money in, that they want a company to be run. So I started having challenges and arguments with some of these investors. And the first one was, I don't do board meetings, right? You're not getting a board meeting. We don't do that. And that was a shock. And they said, oh my God, we've put money in the cowboy here. But no, we're going to do this differently. And then they said, well, what's your mission, vision, value statement? And I said, what? I left the corporate world. I left that behind, and I ran away from all that nonsense. Ran as fast as I could. I'm never doing a performance appraisal again, ever. And I'm never doing a missions. I can remember being in a room of 20 people spending 3 days trying to come up with a mission, vision, value statement that no one ever adhered to anyway. So I thought, okay, I'll give it to them, and that's what I gave them. So it was kind of a download, and it was a bit of tongue-in-cheek, but then it absolutely summarized the purpose of being an entrepreneur, the purpose of having a company, the purpose of learning to play with energy in a different way, make a positive difference in someone's life, have fun doing it, and sharing all the rewards, material and otherwise, to come naturally as a result of setting that energy in motion. And so when you write it out like this or speak it, it becomes a mission, vision, value statement. And I give it to everybody freely. I tell people, take it, use it, because it'll show you how to structure, run, and commit to not just a successful company, but a successful life, a success with balance. And so I've used it in all my companies, and I use it. I sign off every Trev's keys with it, because I want to remind people, make a positive difference in someone's life somehow. But if you're not having fun, there's no point. So make sure you have fun doing all this stuff. And then when you set that energy in motion, all of these things happen naturally. Financial independence comes to you. You don't have to chase it anymore. Success comes to you. You don't have to strive for it anymore. And balance comes your way. The other rewards, the rewards of time and conversation and spiritual pursuits and things like that. So that's how it all came about. It was me being a bit cheeky with one of my investors.
Beautiful. Trevor, thank you so much. This was an absolute honor. I'm so grateful that I got the opportunity to do this. And I just want to end with just a heartfelt invitation to all the listeners to follow that curiosity you may be experiencing right now and to participate and take the transformation experience, because I've been writing online since like 2011, and I've never ever recommended a course. And I'll put everything, my entire reputation, on transformation experience because it has literally transformed my life and continues to transform my life every single day. And some of the deepest lessons that I've learned personally have come directly from Trevor Blake. So it was such a privilege to introduce you to my audience directly and be like, hey, I'm done. Trevor's the man. Trevor's the guy. This is who you need to go to. And he has the course that you need to just unleash the greatest adventure of all time. So thank you so much for being you, Trevor, and sharing your teachings.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Thank you.